lighter skin tone, it's because you're like descended from a region that got less sun and as a result needed to absorb more of that sunlight, versus in a place that would have been exposed to more sunlight, such as between the tropics. You would have like lineage would have selected for a higher melanin production in order to prevent an overexposure of UV, like what it said, so you don't get like skin cancer.
Okay, yeah, that's a good expansion. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that? I mean, have you guys heard something similar to what Gwyneth or Kane has said before in your classes? A little affirmative there. Okay, so yesterday's lesson with evolutionary fitness and natural selection, do you think that played a role in how we developed our skin color? Maybe? Okay. Well, yeah, we can dive in here a bit. So we're starting off with our biology of skin color. You guys have this on the PowerPoint, so you don't have to write it word for word. It's a little wordy. I'll start off reading it though, and then I'll pass it off to someone else to read. So construct an explanation based on evidence that the process of evolution primarily results from 4 factors. Zach, I'm gonna do number 1. Can you see that okay?
Potential for a species to increase in number.
I'll let you choose your next speaker.
Heritable genetic variation increases the species through the mutation in sexual reproduction.
Send it to another table. Well, let you know. Maybe number 3.
Competition for limited resources and competition for limited resources.
And who wants to read number 4? You decide.
Why?
What was that word?
So we'll just start with
Proliferation of those organisms that are better able to survive and reproduce in the environment.
Okay, so just keep those in mind as you go through these. So in your notes, you can draw a box, and then we'll draw 4 boxes, and we're just gonna take some notes on these central questions here, like what connections do you draw between the video and your own life or learning. You can fill in the box throughout the lesson. Take a minute here just to make a little box in your notes. If you haven't had the chance to get your notebooks out, now's a good time. Alright, everyone have a chance to get out their notebooks? Alright, for this lesson, we're going to be looking at a lot of graphs. You're going to be able to interpret a UV or a graph. You can write all over the worksheet if that helps you understand it a little better. Yeah. That might have been an old slide. All right, let's look up here. What is the electromagnetic spectrum? You want to take a stab at this question? Maybe someone we haven't heard from yet. Remy?
Is it like spectrum of light, like, you know, not some of it is visible, or like,
Yeah, there's visible and non-visible light. There's a big spectrum. So it says ultraviolet on there. Can we see ultraviolet light? No.
If we have like a flash.
Maybe with a special light. What else is on there? Like maybe a gamma ray. Can we see gamma rays? No.
We can only see visible light.
Right. But how would gamma rays, for example, might maybe affect us? Or like when might we use gamma rays? Well, it's definitely really strong and maybe bad radiation for us. But you know, it's from our visible light, ultraviolet's right next to it. So, what does that tell us about the strength of UV radiation?
It's decently strong. So like,
Yeah, it's stronger than visible light. It's not as harmful to us as maybe an X-ray. Have you guys had like to get an X-ray and like wear like protection and everything? You guys remember from the last unit, the woman that worked a lot with X-ray diffraction? You guys remember her name?
did she die of cancer?
Yes, I think so. Does anyone remember her name?
she's the one
She helped discover DNA.
she took the photo.
No, she was the other girl. Oh, the other girl, the one who was like,
research.
Yeah, Rosalind Franklin.
Oh, I knew that.
She spent a lot of time in the lab with X-rays.
No, because I thought that was the president's wife that I didn't want to stay along. I thought it was President Franklin. Well, like, do I want to say
Benjamin Franklin? Are you serious?
Okay. Yeah, if you have your packets out, thank you, Remy and Alina, anyone else to help pass them out. Just take a look at some of the questions. Thinking about, is there a connection with UV radiation and skin color? We kind of already addressed that. But just look at the questions real quick. So you know what we're looking for. The video is bit content.
describe the relationship between UV index and latitude.
Yeah, I'll play it up there, 60, if you have it over. Go back.
Like the
Points in it.
The UV index,
latitude.
because it's all like all the.
So latitude is like this, which means the closer it is to 180.
Bill, the questions make sense?
What is this? What is a 180?
Alright. Okay, well I'll play the first 6 minutes of the video in part 1, and you guys can start answering some questions 1 through 6. So you guys have some work time, but I'll play it up front here.
Human brains are gray. Human blood is red. Our bones are off-white. Doesn't matter where you're born or to whom. But human skin is different. Some of us have rich, dark brown skin. Some of us have pinkish white skin. Most of us are somewhere in between. For the longest time, why this variation exists was a real scientific mystery. That opened the door for some to invest this biological trait with moral value, and then use that to justify the suffering of others. But biological traits aren't good or bad. They're features that have evolved because they enhance an organism's odds of surviving and passing on its genes.
Like other animal traits, the sepia rainbow of human skin color evolved through natural selection. Now, thanks to advances in anthropology and genetics, exactly how and why it did is no longer a mystery.
So do you guys recognize that name, Jablonski? She worked with Tina Lasisi that we heard from earlier. Collaborated on it.
Biological anthropologists like myself spend our lives studying how humans evolved and why we differ from one another physically. Our skin provides one of the most visible markers of human variability. It's something that sets us apart from our closest animal relatives. Under their dark fur, chimpanzees have pale skin, and millions of years ago, that was probably also the case for the primates that were our common ancestors. So where did humanity's range of skin colors come from? From physics, we know that the color of any object comes from the wavelengths of light that it reflects back to an observer's eye. We see leaves as green because they reflect back the wavelengths our eyes see as green. Absorbing the wavelengths we see as other colors like blue or red. In humans, different wavelengths of light are reflected or absorbed by a pigment in the top layer of our skin. That pigment's called melanin. It sits inside what look like tiny grains, the melanosomes, that are produced by cells called melanocytes. Our individual genetic inheritance determines the type of melanin inside our melanosomes. The reddish-yellow pheomelanin is more abundant in lightly pigmented people. More darkly pigmented people have more of the brown-black eumelanin. And the more eumelanin, the darker the skin. Melanin also colors human and animal hair and the feathers of many birds. Interestingly, the wavelengths of light that melanin reflects are far less important biologically than the ones it actually absorbs. And of the ones it absorbs, the ones that are the most important are those that we can't even see. Much of the light given off by the sun is invisible to our eyes. Some of that is what's called ultraviolet radiation, which is highly energetic. So much so, it can actually penetrate living cells. When it does, it can wreak havoc within them. It can even cause mutations in skin cell DNA. What stands between us and that threat is the melanin in our skin.
Melanin is kind of like a sensor and kind of like a guardian molecule, and its main job is protection.
For instance, it protects skin cell DNA by forming what are called supranuclear caps and absorbing UV.
They're like little parasols around the nucleus, and UV cannot penetrate these to go and attack the DNA.
That's just one of the things molecular biologist Zalfa Abdelmalek finds remarkable about melanin. Another is the broad range of benefits it provides a diverse collection of species.
We know that melanin in lower vertebrates is important for regulating body temperature. It can also give animals camouflage and allows them to recognize other members of the species to propagate the species.
In humans, one of melanin's functions is clearly to protect cells from UV damage. As we evolved, we lost hair and increased melanin production in our skin. So, is there a connection between the intensity of UV radiation and skin color?
Okay, so take a look at your packets. You can talk with your group to answer number 1 through 6. So be thinking about a hypothesis that links skin color to evolutionary fitness.
I woke up like so exhausted that I just like went back to sleep again, and like I never even thought I woke up. Like when I woke up the second time.
Do you have any dreams?
No, just kind of just lie there in my bed.
Sometimes I usually go back to sleep. Sometimes I don't want to because I'll have like a weird dream.
Yeah, you have to finish the dream before you wake up.
I don't have a dream. Some dreams I don't know. Alright, you guys take us out number 1.
The closer latitude is to the equator, the higher it is.
Can I go? Let's read my
Let's see where you guys are at in like 5 minutes. Keep watching the video.
The earth is filled.
Well, yeah.
Good.
Questions about it?
The equator is
Find the approximate location of the what is the primary value?
We're like 46.
We're like, I'd say we're like 3 to 4. 6 is green.
Yeah, the end of Washington is kind of green.
Any questions?
Can't leave room for Canada.
That's not Washington, usually, guys.
Washington's like up here.
It's not in the blue. I'm gonna go in.
It's like half and half in the blue,
No,
half in the green.
no.
It's an end.
No, it's not. Bro, you think you know where you're
Yeah,
Washington?
it's kind of like if you're always
Bro, it is not in the green.
Well, it's like right here.
You want to ask your group?
I'm pretty sure.
Yes. No,
What
it's
do you guys
in
think
blue.
about number 2?
It's in. It's like. I mean,
Why
the
are-
It's not in green.
What? It's all the way up there.
Ooh.
Oh. Shit. Oh wait. Okay,
Hey guys, I want to distract you for a moment. In case the video kind of glossed over this, like when we look at UV radiation, we're considering the angle it comes from the sun. So this is, you guys remember from previous science classes, why we have seasons, and at the equator, of course. Like, what are the days like at the equator? When does the sun rise and set at the equator?
Where is this?
Rise to 6, sets at 6.
Is it, sorry, was that 6?
Rise to 6.
Yeah, so they have long days, and is it the same year round? Pretty much the same year round. So we can say that it is going to be more intense there. But yeah, at the poles, at the South Pole, for example, it will not be as strong. So yeah, there's some other images you can look at if you're confused for number 2. This is just a map of America and the UV. So this is similar to the UV, or this is the same UV index that you have on your worksheet. And up here in Seattle, I think we are, well, it's really low. I don't know if it's way down here, but this is in February. So as the season progresses in March, it's a bit better. And in Texas, you know, we can imagine Mexico's down here, it's quite a lot more intense based on the latitude. And Bill, does that help? And there's just a fun little. Okay.
Oh, I feel like I have my propensity to see Australia as something I'm doing.
Because it's the y-axis, so it's like higher axis. It actually has to do with like the
That's the way I can do it. It's just like where the UV radiation is supposed to react high directly overhead. So you know, in the morning when the sun's still rising, you know, like so around noon. So there's a term called solar noon, where the sun is directly ahead. So at the equator, it's most often but further north, it might be like.
the sun is up very early this morning.
No, it's vitamin skin cancer. It's
I have the attic.
skin cancer infection. Cancer is typically a evolutionary pressure. Actually,
I can show you the
substitute. Think about it like this. You live, if you don't die between the age of 0 and 5, you're likely to live for like 60 years.
I live in this now, or?
Yes, actually.
No,
we have on the side. Yeah, okay, so if you have one of them dies when they're 0 years old, one of them dies when they're 30, one of them dies when they're 60. The average lifespan is 30. That's what it is. But odds are, if you live like past 5, especially past 13, unless you get sent off to war, odds are pretty good. And you're not having, most likely you're not having kids that soon. And then cancer rates start going up along with like your 50s.
I said that UV radiation is more dramatic there. Are these the factors that make it more likely to get cancer?
No, you're more likely to die in cancer when you're older.
Yeah.
So then the community all over needs to provide resources that we're allocating more to people that have cancer. So it's not very, it makes sense like cancer or associated pressure for it. Especially since melanoma isn't the most deadly cancer.
It's melanoma. Sorry, you got it? Oh, that is. Thanks.
Oh, no, that's just a spot where there's very high I just, no, I think that's just, this is when this is just, I like the spot where the radiation comes out.
Oh, yay, I'm doing Oh, it was 6 questions?
We're just going through the first 6.
We already did that. We're done.
We are green, right?
I done.
Oh, no, we're blue.
That's what I'm saying. But.
Okay. When Arjun gets back, we will go back to the video.
No, look at. I know
Okay. We'll continue the video, but real quick, what is a hypothesis you or your group may have came up with to test the link between skin color and evolutionary fitness? You guys wrapping up? Does anyone come up with a hypothesis? We could test.
higher the UV, so closer to equator, higher the melanin. Yes, that.
What kinds of people would you test though? You have to.
People who live closer to the equator have more melanin in their skin because of the radiation. Whereas people farther from the equator and from higher latitudes have paler skin because of less UV. I'm confusing
You guys are on the right track. I'm thinking, people move around a lot these days, so maybe looking at some populations that haven't moved around for a long time. Fewer and far between nowadays. Alright. Well, we'll keep watching the video here.
I first became fascinated with UV and skin color in the 1990s. But as I searched for information about the global distribution of solar UV, I discovered the available data was in fact quite spotty. I began casting a wider net, and almost by accident found exactly the raw data needed to fix that. It hadn't been collected by anyone interested in my questions, but rather by NASA. In the 1980s, concern about the health risk posed by the depletion of UV-blocking atmospheric ozone led NASA to take millions of UV measurements from space. I asked NASA to send me the data, and then asked my geographer husband, George Chaplin, to try to visualize it. It turned out to be a bigger request than I'd realized, but he found a way to turn all those data points into a map that showed for the very first time exactly how UV exposure varies throughout the world. Most striking was the clear gradient between the equator and the poles, which was interrupted only in places where altitude increased UV exposure
This is actually on the Tibetan Plateau.
and persistent cloud cover decreased it.
Congo Basin, so it's full of humidity and moisture, which is blocking the UV.
Solar energy is a fundamental attribute of any environment, and it's a well-established fact that organisms living at different latitudes adapt in some way to their local solar conditions. To see how closely human skin color correlates with UV exposure, I collected skin pigment measurements made by anthropologists studying indigenous peoples. For many years, anthropologists have faced the challenge of how to accurately measure skin color. We now use this little device called a reflectometer. Basically, it sends out light of specific colors and then it measures the amount of light that is reflected back. This tells us what color Tess's skin is, and we can then compare this to people all over the world. George then created a second map using measured skin colors and environmental data. It showed UV intensity does indeed predict skin color. Wherever UV is strong, skin is dark, like it is near the equator or at high altitude. At the poles, the skin of indigenous people is almost always lighter. That suggests that variation in human skin melanin production arose as different populations adapted biologically to different solar conditions around the world.
Yeah, it's raining a little bit. Alright, so we can keep going with question 10. Question 10 will ask you about that hypothesis.
You guys do 73 modeling?
Yeah, I might need to reflect this. Yeah, I would use that. Yeah, usually don't have to like outfits and stuff unless you're a serial painter or something.
And so I do a drink.
Yeah. Probably as far as testing, it's like that's not also
I think we can
talk
actually
about
use
this,
it.
but in the podcast they talk about how your skin your body has bonds with heat, for example, or your so that bonds can be less effective. You guys want to come up with a hypothesis?
The darker the skin, the latitude, and yeah. So the lower the latitude, the less reflective the skin.
Yeah, sure. How would you test that though? How would you test that?
I would go
we just use the
to a
little
place at
measure?
0 latitude and use that thing
How
on
does that?
someone.
How is you're right? But like, how does that relate to evolutionary fitness? What can you infer about the reflection or absorption of UV light?
That it is bad for you.
Too much of it could be good.
Yeah, too much.
I feel like if you're used to it, like if you're from somewhere closer to the equator and your entire family lives to it, then you're probably used to the UV. But if you're not, if you're from like Russia, then you're probably not used to it.
Or it gets worse.
It's something that takes some, very gives you, but it's again,
I have no
assuming
idea.
you have, you're just kind of hypothesis. You're not limited by your status in high school. You have research grant money. It's a kind of hypothesis. You test people's fertility.
Why would I do that? Why would I do that?
To find out if evolutionary fitness is good or not. Yeah, but how would that relate to more evolutionary fitness? So having the light skin, good
So
or
I
bad?
can simplify my data for question 5.
So this is just asking
Based on what I know about skin pigmentation so far, suggested mechanism by which UV intensity no. I am thirsty.
Yeah. So different skin color can affect evolutionary fitness because it will determine how much UV radiation absorb, which could affect the disease. For example, synthesized DNA or vitamin D. Earlier we also talked about too much UV radiation can damage DNA.
We're working hard. You gave us a look though. Yes. I'll take a picture. I will take a picture.
That doesn't yes.
Yeah. middle.